Welcome into another Inside Carolina postgame. I'm Tommy Ashley. That's Rob Harrington. We are sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt, JohnnyT-Shirt.com. Remember, they're your place to go if you're an Inside Carolina premium subscriber. If you are not a premium subscriber on Inside Carolina, click the QR code there on the right-hand side of the screen above Rob's head. Join up at InsideCarolina.com on the new On3 network. Get that premium subscription. Get your Johnny T-Shirt 10% off code, and then go buy some Christmas gifts. We are there, folks. We are in Christmas season already. Folks, just skip the Thanksgiving season to go straight to Christmas. One thing I'm going to do is appreciate all the veterans out there. Kind of a special day in Chapel Hill a little bit. They have an honoring the veterans wall in Keenan Stadium now and in Keenan Football Center. That was pretty cool to experience that and to be there with all the veterans that were on hand at the unveiling of that wall. But we got a little basketball to talk about. And Rob, I'm going to get your overall thoughts here. We said yesterday on the basketball show, and the coach talked about it, it's going to be a little different without Seth Trimble. It was a little different without Seth Trimble. A little bit of an ugly game, but your overall thoughts?
Well, first of all, I mean, I was not expecting a knockdown drag out with 700 fouls called a 2 hour and 20-minute game. Reminded me of Clemson in 1998, where Clemson lost so many guys. They finished the game with 4 players, and Carolina didn't play well against it during that stretch. And Bill Guthridge famously quipped that, I guess we need to work on our 5-on-4 offense.
Four
apart
people
from
fouled
that,
out.
I was expecting a Kansas hangover. Got some of that. First half's rough, but more of building the good things they've been doing. Defensively, we're pretty sound for the most part. I mean, Radford helped them out some by taking some very bad shots, but I thought the Heels were they were good on the offensive glass. So some of the things they've emphasized, I think, still came to fruition, and filling in the gaps without Trimble will be kind of a work in progress.
Yeah, and I mean you expect it to be different. They've played together for a large portion of the time, and then obviously it culminated in a great second half against Kansas, and then Trimble goes out, and Luka Bogavac, the guy who we expected would be the starter, which is really the only option they have at this point, comes in, hits 19 points. I said one thing Luka would do, Rob, is shoot the basketball. Um, Bart Watts in the chat said he had a quietly sound night. He had a sound night, 5 assists, no turnovers, but the man is not afraid to shoot the basketball, Rob. I'm not sure if that's a great thing, but if he's going to hit some, absolutely. But he's 3 for 11 from 3-point range. I felt like Carolina settled way too much tonight.
There was a lot of that. I thought it was good for them that they saw some zone. I think one of the results of that zone was they took a lot of threes against it, and with some good shooters and also some less good shooters. It's interesting to me that you have guys like Stevenson getting in the mix, taking a lot of threes, which is okay. But where's Kyan Evans? He's the one I think who has the best looking jump shot. As for Bogavac, we talked last night with Justin. You look for him to step up in usage without Seth Trimble, who actually has been very assertive in the offense through the first 2 games and the preseason. Bogavac was more than happy to do that. I agree with you that he might be a little too quick of a trigger, but they'll have to live with some of that. I will say that I'm surprised, having watched his clips from last year, to see him fade on his shot so much or drift. It's a short, not really a follow through. He's leaning on it some. The more he sticks with it, I think he stands in and has more of a classical follow through, the better I think he'll do. I wish he would not pull the string so much.
I will give a hot take now. Here on November the 11th, 2025, Veterans Day, hot take. Luka's going to set the record for made three-pointers in a game for North Carolina this season. I think it's 8. We always talk about this record when people start getting close. I think it's 8. I could be wrong. Somebody in the chat will certainly correct me. Um, and the reason I think he's going to set that record is because he's going to shoot, and one day he's going to be just volcanic hot. And he's going to do that. He'll certainly have opportunities to do it. So that's my hot take of the year. Not that I ever have any, and I'm rolling my eyes there. Let's talk a little bit about the Kyan Evans. You mentioned him, and this is pretty incredible to me. You're the starting point guard for North Carolina. You played 24 minutes. You had 5 assists and 2 turnovers, which you'll take. He shot the ball one time. That is incredible to me. And it was an and one, if my memory serves. The stats spared out 3 points. Rob, he's got to be more aggressive, especially without Seth Trimble in the lineup.
Yeah, that I mean, it was easy to overlook it tonight because they weren't threatened, but it is a concern for me because this has happened a few times now, going back to the preseason as well, where Evans just isn't looking to score. Even Derek Dixon, the freshman, when he comes into the game, he's more aggressive offensively than Evans is, and it shouldn't work that way. You know, Evans is a really good shooter. We know that. He had some big ones against Kansas, and he actually passed up a couple of what I thought were open threes tonight. You know, everyone else, I thought I was like, hey, chill. You know, let's move the ball a little bit more against the zone and get something easy because Veesaar was playing really well. But then Evans was the one who actually passed up wide open ones. You know, I want him to shoot more, and I'm sure that they will talk to him about that. I know he's very busy trying to fulfill the more traditional point guard duties, and I think he's doing a solid job of that, as you've noted. He had one really nice bounce pass tonight that looked like a true point guard to me. Now he just needs to round it out, you know, to bring back his more basic game of shooting because they're going to need that. And as you mentioned, especially with Trimble out.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be able to balance the offense out, and Evans there, and like we said, he can shoot it. He can absolutely shoot it, and he can get hot and heat it up. We saw the difference with him being aggressive and scoring in the first and second half last Friday night against Kansas. I mean, he's a difference maker for this team if he gets going. I was shocked when I saw he had one shot in this game. And to your point, and it's a great point, he sort of got lost in it because Radford never really was a threat. The game was close early. Um, but it wasn't really a close game later, and you just kind of lost the fact that Evans had one shot there in the 24 minutes. We're talking with Rob Harrington here on the post game Inside Carolina. Almost 400 people in the chat. I have a feeling this is going to be a hot season. I said it before. We had close to 700 in the chat after Central Arkansas. We had 1,700 plus in the chat after Kansas. And now we're having 405 at the moment after a Radford game here on November the 11th, Tuesday night. It's going to be a great season for North Carolina fans here at Inside Carolina. So keep it up and always get live on the message boards or in the chat. Rob, Henry Veesaar. This is the line I like. 5 for 7, 7 for 11 from the free throw line, 7 rebounds, 1 turnover, no assist, which don't really mind with a big man, 18 points. Efficient, not a lot of shots to score 18 points and come in second on the team in scoring behind Bogavac's 19. What'd you see from Veesaar?
I love the way he played on both ends. I mean, he was obviously showing the skill and the scoring efficiency that we know he has and that you mentioned, but he was driving Radford crazy defensively too. Even when he wasn't necessarily making a statistical play, he was all in their business when they would get into the paint. You notice in the second half when he went out of the game, they started attacking the rim. When they tried that early in the game, they ended up hoisting a lot of bad threes themselves. I thought just his presence there was a severe deterrent to what Radford wanted to do offensively, and that's why you have a big guy like that, and it doesn't show up. It might show up in plus minus, but it may not show up in the box score. So I thought he was very good on both ends, especially on a night when the 1A and 1B front court combo with Caleb Wilson had a little bit of an off night for him. Veesaar was there to pick up all that slack.
Let's talk about the defensive side now. And I can't remember if it was on our message boards or maybe in one of the chats. Veesaar protects the rim. Seth Trimble's absence is going to lead to, I think, a less effective perimeter on ball defense. But Veesaar's ability to protect the rim, not just him, Jaron Stevenson in there, certainly Caleb Wilson's trying to swat everything too as well. Speak to that aspect of the defense that needs to step up in Trimble's absence. Because we saw last year, and it felt like in years past, especially under Hubert Davis, guys get to the rim and there's very little or minimal deterrence at the rim. That's not the case with Veesaar out there. Only credited with 1 block tonight, but to your point, made it very difficult for those Radford guards and even the Radford bigs. I mean, the Radford bigs are fouling out with no points. It speaks to Veesaar's presence on the offensive end, but on the defensive end, Rob, I think this is where the Trimble absence can be minimized more so than people might expect, and that's at the rim.
That's right. And we talked about this last night as well. You know, Trimble was hugely important in a primetime matchup against Kansas, and of course the defense won't be as good without him. But I think they have more tools to deal with that than you might think, or one might think. One thing, it was a little bit of an incomplete for me tonight with some of the, especially Bogavac and Powell playing more minutes. I thought they did okay. It wasn't a great opponent, so it's a little bit inconclusive probably until they play Michigan State. But I thought they moved their feet generally well. We're switching okay. Neither of them is as physical or athletic as Trimble for sure, and you wouldn't want them matched up against an elite guy if possible. But I thought they were credible with a couple of bad moments each ways, but okay. And like you said, when you have Veesaar and Wilson back there, and Jaron Stevenson too, who I think is having a fantastic defensive year so far. He's another one who doesn't always make a flashy play, but his ability to switch and to keep plays in front of him and away from the big guys, so they aren't getting caught in compromised positions. Especially Wilson has a tendency to be overly aggressive sometimes. And you and I talked about this during the summer, in the early fall, that Wilson, being a freshman, probably would succumb to foul trouble from time to time. I think you don't want to take that aggression away from him. But if Stevenson and the other guys do a really good job of switching, then he won't be put in bad positions as much. That will help him a lot.
Yeah, and there's sometimes when Wilson just needs to let the play out. I mean, that time where he got the foul, he tried to make a sensational block and fell on the guy and picked up a cheap foul, and then he has to go sit with foul trouble. It's interesting when talking about Radford, and of course Carolina wins by 15, but Radford had two guys with 17 shots, and Dale Jones with 18 shots. Nobody had over more than 4 shots on the rest of the team. You're talking about a three-headed monster. It's interesting that you got Dennis Scott calling the game when Radford's got their version of non-lethal weapon three out there against
Misfire
North
weapon
Carolina.
three.
So, weapon jam three. But Parker leads the way with 23, Dale Jones with 22, and then Johnson on 4 for 17, 10 points for Radford. You mentioned Caleb Wilson. Again, we're talking with Rob Harrington on the Inside Carolina postgame show. We're over 500 tonight. It's crazy, folks. Love it. Keep it coming. Tell your friends, tell your family to get into live chat and ask some questions. We certainly have time for questions tonight. But Caleb Wilson tonight, Rob, I felt like he was trying to do too much. And he let the game come to him to a certain extent on the offensive end against Kansas tonight. He was hell bent on getting his shots up. That's the freshman aspect. And like you said, you love the aggression. Just your overall thoughts on what you saw tonight from him.
Yeah, we talked about this last night too. He's going to be up and down some. He is a freshman, as good as he is, especially when he's disrupted the way that he was by fouls. I thought, just like you said, in the second half, he pressed some. You could tell he was trying to get going. He was trying to get some stuff done, including a couple of bad shots. Although, and I was watching it, it's like a hawk. I was like, is he going to do a thing where he shoots every time, trying to get some numbers? Even during a stretch where I thought he flirted with that some, he made two really nice kick out passes for threes, or attempted threes. And I thought, okay, no, he's still playing in the team concept. He is pressing a little bit, but that's a great sign. I mean, here we are talking in the third game of the year, and he's already showing maturity. For a guy who's suddenly getting even more hype than he might have expected after Kansas. He's still keeping it grounded enough to keep it between the lines on a night where he's not playing as well. And I was very impressed and encouraged by that.
Yeah, and he has 14 rebounds. I mean,
Right.
there is a tendency when you're not shooting it well and you're used to scoring to sort of fade out and disappear. We used to talk about it, and I mentioned Bryce Johnson last night with Justin and other guys. You had tendencies to see guys that if they weren't shooting it well, they did nothing else. And that's where you hurt the team. Caleb Wilson, while he absolutely wanted to get on the board scoring, no question, he wanted to score some points, and he took 13 shots to do it. He had 14 rebounds, including 5 offensive, and the kick out passes you're talking about. And he's still disruptive on defense. He's just got to learn, especially in the night where officials, I mean, Radford had 33 fouls called on them. I think Carolina had 22. I mean, if I were on the front row of the stands, you would clearly hear my voice going, let them play the game. I mean, it was ridiculous. It was a foul every couple seconds. But Wilson has to understand that, right? They're calling us tight. I got to stay out of foul trouble. And those are things that come with being experienced and all like that. Let's sort of talk about how you thought the offense looked overall without Trimble out there. And you mentioned the zone earlier. I felt like Carolina didn't have somebody that could drive and penetrate the zone there for a minute. They figured it out and they scored 89 points. I mean, let's be honest, that's a lot of points. But just in general, Carolina's approach on the offensive end I felt like at times people were hesitant to attack. I don't know if that's fair or not, but that's why I asked you the question. What'd you see in that aspect?
I couldn't get a whole lot out of it. I think for me, because they were seeing some zone that they may not have expected to see, or at least they hadn't seen much of yet. And the fact that the guards were such willing shooters, and I thought, well, I think this is who they are without Trimble. I mean, certainly Bogavac is a much more. Trimble had 7 attempted threes in 2 games. Bogavac is easily going to surpass that on a per game basis if he's allowed to do so. That's just the style of player he is, and it just so happened that those were the shots that avail themselves against the defense that they were competing against. The thing that's and I thought they did a good job with passing, especially on possessions where they really needed to get a good shot. Veesaar was involved. The more he was involved tonight, the better. So they were still doing a nice job of that. Maybe not as much ball movement at times, but again, zone. And the one surprise for me, as mentioned already, was that I thought Kyan Evans would say, okay, this is now my time to step into more of a scoring role. And to see him step into the shadow like that was the one thing that surprised me. And I'm sure that will change, but it's something to keep an eye on the next 2 weeks, because we're only, a couple of weeks from Michigan State. They're going to have him contributing, especially with Jared Stevenson getting so many minutes. I was happy to see him be more assertive, but as a rule, he's not the most prolific offensive player. And you don't want Stevenson and Evans both being that way in the starting lineup. So I'm really looking for Evans to step it up.
Yeah, I mean, with this lineup here, with Trimble out, you've got 5 shooters in the lineup, and so you need 5 guys to shoot the basketball. So maybe the number one stat of the night is Kyan Evans on the one shot only that we talked about. Just for folks that haven't seen the stats, Bogavac with 19, Stevenson with 15, Veesaar with 18 and 7. Stevenson also had 7 rebounds. You like to see that. Caleb Wilson with 13 and 14. Carolina had 55 total rebounds, 37 on the defensive end. When you shoot poorly, Carolina 38%, Radford 34%. There's going to be a lot of rebounds to get. So 55 is a lot, but not unexpected. And then points in the paint, I thought was interesting. Both teams with 30. Rob, just sort of before we get out of here, let's talk about the substitution pattern. I think it was pretty standard, but we did see more. Jonathan Powell with 22 minutes, Dixon with 17, and Jaden Young with 10. I do like Powell sitting in the corner shooting threes. I mean, that looks like that is his spot and that's his game. What'd you think about the subs and Dixon and Young and Powell in particular?
I thought early it looked like the team had no depth at all. Certainly when Stevenson was out with the injured ankle, they were really having to dig some, and it just looks like a big drop off. They got better as the game went along. I like Powell's minutes. I think he's getting comfortable. He's taking the right shots. It's funny because he would have been great in last year's offense, taking all those corner threes, but he looks good doing them this year too. I like Young's experience. I don't know if he will play big minutes. I just think there are too many people ahead of him. I mean, we have belabored the point on the backup center position, but you can't ignore it. They still, I don't think, have any answers there yet. It wouldn't surprise me against Michigan State if we see another 35 plus minutes for Veesaar. Basically to take him out only when he has to come out, because I just don't think yet there is a solidified rotation to give him relief with any real productivity expectations. You're just trying to buy a little time. Hopefully High and Brown will step up. I think they're a little behind where I thought they might be to start the season. Probably what the coaches thought as well.
Yeah, High did have 6 rebounds in 9 minutes of action. James Brown, 4 points and 3 rebounds in 8 minutes of action. I agree. Those guys had to step up. And you mentioned Young and his minutes or lack thereof. 1 for 6, 0 for 3 from three, and 3 turnovers in 10 minutes. That gets you a firm seat on the bench when everybody's healthy. And so you'd like to see him perform a little better. I do like Jonathan Powell's game. I think that he's got a little microwave in him, can come in, especially with Trimble out, can hit some threes there. But Carolina's depth's going to be a question, and we'll see how it goes. The minutes are good and balanced tonight. We'll see how they're balanced when Carolina ramps it up. They've got Central on Friday, and of course we'll be back to talk about that on. I guess we're going on these Friday night games. That's at a 9 o'clock Friday night game. So Rob and I will be joined. No, it's not even you. I think
That's
it's
right. I got a pinch hitter.
Oh my goodness! I think Sherelle and I get together at like 11:30 on a Friday night to talk North Carolina Central. Rob, before we get out of here, and since I won't talk to you to again Monday night, final thoughts on this one. Carolina gets the job done, does not cover. I don't know what the final line is, but covering, who cares? Carolina gets a win in the first game without Seth Trimble. Your final thoughts?
Yes, there were. This won't be one of the highlight package games by the end of the season. I think it's safe to say that for a lot of reasons, including what I thought was way too tightly called a game in terms of fouls. But I didn't think it was a reversion to bad play. I think they are continuing to build on the good things that they do. They had a new lineup change. Considering Trimble was out the first game without him, considering there was bound to be a little coming down to earth after the Kansas high. I was perfectly fine with it. I was worried early. You really don't want to see an injury in this type of game. And I was glad that Stevenson came back and didn't look to me any worse for wear. So all in all, I thought it was a success. Looking for another success on Friday. I will watch. I will stay up and watch the post game. I'll be out of town, but I will. Maybe I'll step on the other side and I'll heckle you guys from the stands.
Absolutely. You can get in the chat and just throw flames in the chat there. It'll be a late post game on Friday night. Of course, we've got Inside Carolina coverage across the board here from Radford and from Chapel Hill and from the Smith Center with with Adam and Jeremiah and Jim Hawkins on the photos. And of course, everybody behind the scenes. Stay tuned for the game plan on Thursday night. We talk Carolina Wake Forest football. Then we've got Central post game on Friday night. Then we've got the day after on Sunday. And then the big show of the week is the basketball show on Monday night with Rob Harrington, Justin Jackson, and the third stringer bringing up the rear. And then we sort of do it all over again. Another week of coverage at Inside Carolina. Shout out to the 500, almost 600 people in the chat. It's always fun to talk Carolina basketball, and it's always good to talk Carolina basketball with Rob Harrington and 600 of our best friends on Inside Carolina. Everybody stay safe. Happy Veterans Day. Shout out to all the veterans that allowed us to sit here and do this for you guys. It's been a pleasure. Rob, thanks.